Yeah, maybe policy-wise, I would do better under the Democrats or Bernie Sanders. But these other people just seem fucking crazy. They seem like committed to just going to absurd lengths just for shits and giggles, just for the fuck of it, just this bizarre attachment to things that are just ridiculous. To your point about, is he just crazy? When you meet him in person and spend that kind of time, and he's not on his his attack mode thing, he does not strike you as a crazy person or a person who doesn't listen or can't hear things. Again, they were very mad at me for saying this, but that's what happened. And I am not a liar.
In the end, Tarantino's stance is a bold and much-needed reminder. Real art doesn't aim to comfort, it aims to confront, move, and reflect the complexities of real life. He's one of the rare filmmakers who hasn't surrendered to the pressures of ideological conformity, and for that, he's earned even his critics' respect, Maher included. Whether he's taking aim at woke absurdities or standing up for artistic freedom, Tarantino makes one thing clear: filmmakers should be free to tell the stories they want, without fear of being silenced. Not every movie needs to carry a political mission, and not every director should be boxed in by one. Maybe, just maybe, Hollywood is finally shaking off its performative coma. And if that's true, then we might be on the brink of a genuine creative renaissance. No more lectures, no more forced messaging, just real stories told by real artists. That's the Hollywood we need. If you're ready to leave the noise behind and hear more real talk, hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss what's next. See you soon.
I just don't feel like anybody in this country can even presume that what people think about them is anywhere near the truth. And if you do think that, you're very naive, and people are just going to want to believe. Somebody told me just the other day that, speaking of girlfriends, this one is funny. This one wasn't in that list, but they could have put it there. But somebody, they were out to dinner with a few people, and this person said that I used to date Ann Coulter.
I've heard that.
Which
I've heard it.
Okay, well, it's not true. And both of us would say that. Now, am I friends with her? Yes. And anyone who doesn't like that can go fuck themselves. I'll be friends with whoever I want. I think I proved that over and over again, including with Donald Trump. You know, I believe in talking to people. But it's not like I've ever, to either one of them, given an inch on what my beliefs are.
Tarantino drives home a critical point here. Everyone has a right to their opinion, including critics. Free speech isn't reserved for one side, it applies to all, regardless of political beliefs. He knows not every viewer will resonate with his work, and he's totally fine with that. He welcomes feedback, critique as part of the job. But where he draws the line is when criticism turns nasty, when it becomes personal, venomous, and vindictive. When people try to cancel him just because his work appeals to a different political crowd, that's when it stops being criticism and becomes character assassination. Tarantino doesn't make films to cater to the mob. He creates to express, challenge, and spark thought. Disagree with his work? Fine, say so. But don't reduce the man to a political label, or slander him for refusing to play by ideological rules. That's not commentary, that's censorship hiding behind moral outrage.
Our big problems, I think, politically, is like this idea that we're the good people. We know we know what's good. And anyone who doesn't agree with that, well, they're an existential threat to America. And that happens on both sides.
I agree, but you know, it is a weird position for me to be in. I was talking to some friends before the show, and I was saying, like, I think that if you and I discussed policy solutions for the country, I'd probably be to the left of you. But
in some ways, yeah.
Probably most ways.
You like Bernie.
I did.
I like Bernie, but I don't want socialism in America. I mean, more than what we have. We already have plenty.
But the issue is, today I feel like what defines someone politically is not, it's not the policies they want, but it's what they believe to be true.
Correct, exactly. Yeah, Matt Taibbi writes about this.
I'm a big fan, he's amazing.
Exactly. It's about time the perpetually outraged critics and the so-called social justice crowd grasp a basic truth. Not every film is made to deliver a message. Some movies are meant to be fun. Some are meant to distract. And yes, some tackle heavy issues. There's room for all of it. What people forget is that filmmakers are storytellers with individual visions. Their goal isn't always to mirror their own politics. It's often about exploring different characters, perspectives, or situations. But when creators are pressured to inject political themes into stories where they don't naturally fit, that's not progress, it's creative sabotage. Forcing ideological content into narratives that don't need it waters down the story and kills its emotional impact. What makes a movie powerful isn't its politics, it's the authenticity, the emotion, the storytelling. Let artists create freely. Let films breathe without being turned into moral billboards. Let art stand on its own.
Modus operandi of news organizations used to be informing the public, and then it became audience stroking. How can we interpret this thing that just happened in such a way that our audience will give us likes?
Yep.
I like that. I like you said it that way. I like your point of view because that's what I already think, and I hate them, and so I like.
He's right.
He's right.
Yeah.
No, and it's just.
I worked for ABC. Started ABC New Division did a joint venture in 2014 called Fusion, and I was at Vice, and I moved over there, and then they told me that the new trend was going to be called mission-driven storytelling, and I said, "What does that mean?" And they said, "There's no such thing as objectivity. Everyone is subjective, so we're going to tell the stories that our audience wants to hear." I had a meeting with the president, and he was talking to me about this, and I said, "Does that mean if there is a news story that is true and important, we would choose not to report it because it might upset our audience?" And he said, "Yeah, I think that's fair." The company went bankrupt. They fired everybody. But this wasn't unique to them. They were chasing the trend. One of their marketing guys told me explicitly, "We want to maximize shares because we have to maximize views."
It might sound a bit far-fetched, but it happens more often than you'd expect, especially from the political left. A large segment of that crowd can't watch a movie without immediately filtering it through a hyper-political lens. If a film even hints at conservative values or themes that lean right, the backlash is instant. Suddenly, it's not just entertainment, it's a declaration of war. Outrage follows. The cast, the crew, the writers, everyone gets targeted just for daring to create something that challenges their worldview. But that mindset completely misses the point of cinema. Movies aren't supposed to exist in an ideological bubble. They're meant to reflect the full spectrum of human experience, the highs, the lows, the contradictions. They're mirrors, not megaphones. And not every film is going to echo your personal beliefs. That's the beauty of art. It should provoke, question, and sometimes even offend. Dismissing a film simply because it doesn't align with your politics, that's not critique, that's censorship in disguise.
Maximize views. We have to maximize views because we've already sold a set amount to the advertisers. One company bought 500,000 views from us. We don't complete that contract until those views are delivered. How do we deliver them? Angering moms. Middle-aged women who are angry share more than anyone else, so we're going to write stories that do that. That's actually what he told me. So it was social justice, it was racism.
I just pictured my writers all guffawing just because, I've had like a writer's room since 1993, Politically Incorrect.
Yeah, wow.
That show went on there. So
I was a little kid.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's, the joy of my life. One of the great joys is having a writer's room. I've said this before, but like Paul McCartney once said, "I'd rather have a band than a Rolls Royce."
Now here's something worth noting. Tarantino genuinely thinks Hollywood might finally be purging itself of the woke plague. And if that's really happening, amen to that. Frankly, this era of virtue signaling cinema has become more than just tiring, it's creatively suffocating. Instead of entertaining or inspiring, modern films often come across as bland lectures wrapped in mediocre plots. It's like imagination has been replaced by checklists and forced political messaging. If Tarantino's right and we're steering toward a reset, then bring it on. A revival where story, emotion, and compelling characters matter more than ideological box sticking would be a welcome shift. Picture a Hollywood where movies challenge and entertain instead of preach and pander. That's the version of the industry we originally fell in love with. And if this cultural cleanse is truly underway, there may finally be something to get excited about again. But during a sit-down with Joe Rogan, Tarantino made a troubling observation. Watch this.
Politics are like, if you were, I'm like a Chicago liberal, but the way things have gone, especially with like the woke stuff, this is where I end up in this position, and so does my neighborhood. I think it's interesting to see my neighborhood reflective of my politics and vice versa.
I think the phrase I was using last year was aggressively non-common sense or uncommonsensical. And it's like I accent aggressively. I don't think the woke people who have the vast amount of energy really in the Democratic Party understand why the people vote against them. And it's like, because if you add up like how many people are really affected by some of the aggressively uncommon sense things, it's probably not that many.
You had a great bit on that.
Yeah.
Let's stop here for a moment, because Tarantino made a seriously thought-provoking observation. He brought up the old Hays Code, a set of rules from the 1930s that forced studios to self-censor anything considered too indecent, especially when it came to sex and morality. Back then, people saw it as a major threat to free expression, a way to neuter artistic freedom for the sake of moral order. And here's the twist. Tarantino thinks we're right back there again. Only now the censors aren't religious groups or watchdogs, they're the permanently offended woke mobs. These digital enforcers use cancel culture to go after any film or director that doesn't parrot their worldview. Artistic value gets thrown out if it doesn't check the right ideological boxes. Directors tiptoe, writers self-censor, and studios cave to Twitter tantrums. It's censorship disguised as progress, and it's every bit as chilling as the Hays Code ever was.
When you add up these things and, men competing in women's sports and like just too much indoctrination of children with sexual ideas that they're too young to understand. Like when you add up all these things that get in the media a lot, it paints a picture, not a wrong picture, in the mind of the average voter that, yeah, maybe policy-wise I would do better under the Democrats or Bernie Sanders, but these other people just seem fucking crazy. They seem like committed to just going to absurd lengths just for shits and giggles, just for the fuck of it, just this bizarre attachment to things that are just ridiculous.
This is exactly why Maher holds Tarantino in such high esteem. He's one of the few left-leaning voices unafraid to speak out against the absurdity on his own side. Tarantino doesn't sugarcoat things, and Maher values that honesty in a Hollywood that's lost its creative soul to ideological posturing. Just look at the Snow White remake disaster. It bombed both critically and financially. Why? Because the filmmakers were more focused on pandering than storytelling. They refused to cast little people as dwarves, citing sensitivity, and instead used CGI, robbing real actors of work they've long been proud to do. That's not progress, it's insulting. And it's exactly the kind of performative nonsense that Tarantino and Maher have no problem calling out.
I think that the way the Democratic Party has handled opposition has guaranteed the kind of Trumpian politics.
Well, I'm sure you heard about my little trip to the White House.
Absolutely.
And
very impressed.
Thank you. And the thing that upset the far left so much, these same people who believe in the crazy things I was just mentioning, and the ones who really hate me, they really found a new reason to hate me, because when I came back and gave my report about it, among the things I said, to your point about everything is he crazy, was, I think, word for word, a crazy person doesn't live in the White House. A person who plays a crazy person on TV lives in the White House.
Yeah.
And they found that very triggering.
Bill Maher's disdain for Hollywood's obsession with all things woke is hardly breaking news. I've talked about it countless times on this channel. The industry's ditched real storytelling in favor of hashtag activism and moral grandstanding. But buried in all that ideological noise, a few voices still shine. And one of the brightest is Quentin Tarantino. Even Maher, a tough critic of the film world, holds him in high regard. Why? Because Tarantino's as old school as it gets. He doesn't virtue signal, doesn't cater, and definitely hasn't caught the woke bug. He makes gutsy, often provocative films that challenge his audience instead of babying them. While others stay inside the lines, he redraws the Hulk into sand. It's rare, fearless, and honestly, a breath of fresh air.
That was my estimation. Again, to your point about, is he just crazy? When you meet him in person and spend that kind of time, and he's not on his his attack mode thing, he does not strike you as a crazy person, or a person who doesn't listen or can't hear things. Again, they were very mad at me for saying this, but that's what happened. And I am not a liar. That's my main bond with the audience. So even if I offended some people by telling the truth, in the long run, that's what I do.
Quentin Tarantino just scorched modern Hollywood in a blazing interview with the always fiery Bill Maher. And honestly, it was absolutely hilarious. The iconic filmmaker didn't pull any punches, ripping into his loudest detractors and branding them as woke phonies and moral posturers. Maher, never one to stay quiet, threw in some biting commentary of his own. If you appreciate sharp, unfiltered political takes, smash that subscribe button. You won't want to miss moments this raw and entertaining.